Guys, we've had a bit of a slow week. There's really not much crazy and exciting news happening right now that's really catching my attention. That's until I saw what the Rust Foundation is doing with their new trademark policy draft. Now, for any of the uninformed, this might seem pretty boring. Why would you care about a trademark policy? Oh boy, you have no idea what you're about to witness. This image right here is a violation of the Rust trademark policy, and you're about to see exactly why. So, on April 7th, the Rust Foundation put out this tweet. From today through April 16th, we invite you to review the current draft of the updated Rust trademark policy and share any feedback you might have using this form down below. Your responses will help us ensure the Rust trademark policy is useful for all. And if after everything you hear today, you feel like it's a bad trademark policy, please do go and voice your opinions on the survey. So this right here is the trademark policy. I highly recommend you go and read the entire thing for yourself. I am just going to focus on the parts that are fairly controversial. Now, for everything going forward, keep this in mind. The Rust Foundation wants the Rust project and the Rust language communities to be able to use the trademarks how they want, in good faith, as much as possible. We love that you love Rust and want it to be represented in your projects. These guidelines will help you do that. I also want to make it very clear that the Rust Foundation and the Rust project are completely separate entities. The Rust project are the developers of the Rust language, the Rust compiler, all the things that you need to make Rust work, but it's kind of a loosely managed organization. The Rust Foundation, they are the ones that manage the trademark and do all of the corporate things to make everything, run together, bring funding in, and things like that. And the Rust project is kinda just as surprised by this trademark as everybody else. We asked the Rust Foundation to update the old Rust trademark policy. They proposed a first draft and are asking all of us to submit our feedback. Rest assured that the Rust project will only accept something that we can stand behind and addresses the concerns that have been raised. So, let's start off strong with a quick trademark policy reference for common use cases. Selling goods. Unless explicitly approved, use of the Rust name or logo is not allowed for the purposes of selling products / promotional goods for gain or profit, or for registering domain names. For example, it is not permitted to sell stickers of the Rust logo in an online shop for your personal profit. Now, this example is a good example, and I feel like most people would agree that you probably shouldn't be doing that. And I think people would also agree if you are selling something with the Rust name and the Rust logo attached. But the Rust name by itself, I'll give you a quick second to guess what the Rust name is. It's Rust. Rust is a very generic term. It can be that video game where you run around naked beating people with rocks. Rust is not something that you own, and there is absolutely no world where you can stop people registering domain names using the word Rust. But we'll get more into domain names a bit later. Showing support of Rust. When showing your support of the Rust project on a personal site or blog, you may use the Rust name or logo as long as you abide by all the requirements listed in the policy. You may use the Rust name or logo in social media handles, avatars, and emojis to demonstrate Rust project support in a manner that is decorative so long as you don't suggest commercial Rust affiliation. This part is very important. One thing I do want to touch on though is you can have Rust in your name as a social media handle, but if it's in your name, that's going to make it part of the domain. So now you have Rust in the domain, so that already contradicts this previous thing. But we'll move on from that. Inclusion of the marks in educational materials. You may use the Rust name in book and article titles and the logo in graphic components so long as you make it clear that the Rust project or foundation has not reviewed / approved / endorsed your content. Thank God I can make a Rust tutorial and tell you it's a Rust tutorial. But if you're gonna do that, as they state a bit later, they require you to state your affiliation up front. We require this to be stated up front, i.e. before the first paragraph or page of your work, in a clear and dedicated space. You may use the following language or a close variation of it. Disclosure: the material in this book, paper, blog, article has not been reviewed, endorsed, or approved of by the Rust Foundation. For more information on the Rust Foundation trademark policy, click here. So if you're gonna make, say, I don't know, a meme about the Rust Foundation having an insane trademark policy, make sure you include a disclaimer saying that this meme is not endorsed by the Rust Foundation. Now, even though they keep saying name, what they are actually referring to is their mark, and they refer to this later in the document. They just use name early on, and name and mark have a completely different meaning. When they say mark, what they are actually referring to is their trademark of Rust in a specific context. Rust, the programming language, software, compiler, library, and community. Cargo, the build system, package manager. And Clippy, the linting tool. And then their logo, the gear logo, programming language, software, compiler, community. But it starts off being worded in this incredibly confusing way, leading users to have no idea what they're actually allowed to do. Luckily for those who are confused, they include this handy-dandy FAQ section. Can I use the Rust logo as my Twitter avatar? We consider social media avatars on personal accounts to be fair use. On the other hand, using Rust trademarks in corporate social media bio/profile pictures is prohibited. Now, Twitter is a really interesting example, because when Twitter has monetization, the barrier between a business account and a personal account gets very, very thin. Or let's say YouTube, for example. Let's say you're a Rust education channel and all you do is talk about Rust. Well, if you're making money, that would probably be a corporate account, so now you can't use the Rust name or the Rust logo in your name. But as we saw earlier, you can use it in education. So if it's an educational corporate account, you might be able to. If it's educational and you're volunteering, you can do it. But if it's a regular corporate account, then you can't. I think we got that straight. But regardless, you probably can't use the logo anyway. Can I use a modified version of the logo on social media? In general, we prohibit the modification of the Rust logo for any purpose except to scale it. This includes distortion, transparency, and color changes affiliated with for-profit brands or political ideologies. But I would imagine one of the ways you can't modify it is by cropping the image. So if you use the Rust logo and you don't show the entire Rust logo, now you're violating the trademark policy. Okay, but what if you're running an event and you're charging for tickets? If your event is for profit, you will need approval to use the Rust name, once again saying name and not mark, or logo. If you are simply covering costs and the event is non-profit, you may use the Rust name or logo as long as it's clear that the event is not endorsed by the Rust Foundation. You are free to use Ferris the Crab without promotion. Now, that by itself sounds mostly reasonable. We'll get back to events in just a bit, and that kinda goes out the window. But getting back to merch, what if you are selling stickers, shirts, anything else, and you are donating some of the profits from that? As this would be a commercial use of the Rust name or logo, once again, name, you would need our approval to do this, and would need to develop a transparent arrangement for donating funds. But how transparent does it need to be? What requirements are there? And as we'll see a bit later, there are certain things that they don't want you to support. But what if you're a Rust developer and want to know how you can name your project? Can I use the word Rust in the name of one of my crates? The project would like the word Rust in a crate name to imply ownership by the project. You should generally use -rs instead in this situation. Please see use of the marks in toolchains or other software for use with Rust. Is that just related to crates, or is that a thing with other things made in Rust? For example, there is a famous project called Rust for Linux. Is this allowed, or would they have to change their name? Well, as they say, using the marks, finally using the word marks, in the name of a tool for use in the Rust toolchain, a software program written in the Rust language, which is what this is, or a software program compatible with Rust software, which is also what this is, will most likely require a license. The RS abbreviation can be used instead. So don't name your project with the word Rust in it. Now, we're going to jump ahead to 5.2 and 5.3 because this is where things get kind of weird, kind of ridiculous, and don't really make any sense. User groups. We want to support and facilitate Rust user groups. You can use the word marks as part of your user group name, provided that you formally adopt and enforce a robust code of conduct appropriate to your specific user group. Why should I need a code of conduct? Why? This is my group. It's my user group, and I'm going to run it how I want. The main focus of the group is discussion of and education about Rust software. Okay, what if it's not a purely Rust user group, it is a developer user group? Can we advertise that we support Rust here as well? Well, if it's not focused, then no. Any software or services the group provides are without cost. The group does not make a profit. Any charge to attend meetings is to cover the cost of the venue, food, and drink only. So you're not only not allowed to make profit, you have to lose money. Because you're not allowed to charge for software or services, you're only allowed to charge for food and drink. So if the software and services cost money, like say you have web servers, things like that, you either have to jack up the price of the food and drink or lose money on those aspects. But all the other stuff still applies. Note that the universal considerations for all uses above still apply. Specifically, that you may not use or register the marks as part of your own trademark, service mark, domain name, company name, trade name, product name, or service name. So you cannot register a domain name that is rustusergroup.com.au. What are you talking about? Now, we've already talked a lot about merch, but there is a nice addition in promotional goods. Promotional goods are non-software goods that use the marks and that are intended to advertise the project, promote the project, or show membership in the project community, such as stickers, socks, key fobs, glassware, things like that. You may make promotional goods for free giveaway at open source conferences and events, provided that the goods are in good taste and compatible with the values of the project. What does that mean? So does every single thing that people give away have to be approved by the project or risk the foundation coming after them? If I show you this meme, is this in good taste? I think it is, but you may disagree. This is my favorite section. Uses we consider infringing without seeking further permission from us. Events and conferences. We will consider requests to use the marks on a case-by-case basis, but at a minimum would expect events and conferences using the mark to be non-profit making, focused on discussion of and education on Rust software. So if you're an event that makes money and isn't focused on Rust, but has Rust there, you can't mention in any of your promotional material you have Rust there because that would be violating their trademark. Prohibit the carrying of firearms, comply with local health regulations, and have a robust code of conduct. Now, we already saw this one in their previous things, but what does your trademark have to do with firearms and local health regulations? Also, going by what they wrote, you can have a user group that allows firearms and doesn't follow local health regulations, but you can't do that at an event. Regardless though, this has nothing to do with your trademark. And finally, the domain name. We will likely consider using the marks as part of a domain name or subdomain, an infringement of our marks. So not only if you go and buy something like, I don't know, rustusergroup.com.au, but also if you have rust.learntoprogram.com, you have rust. I don't know, maybe facepunch.com, the one for the game. Also, I'm guessing because it's part of the domain name, you can't use the top level domain .rs. I say this because they generically say the marks. They don't say the Rust name mark or the cargo mark. And if we go back up to their marks, we can find these ones here, Rust, Cargo, and Clippy, but also these ones under freely available to use, one of those being RS. So is it freely available to use, or is using it in a domain name an infringement of their trademark? I don't know. No one knows. And before anyone says, it says freely available to use, therefore it's freely available to use, it's under the category of trademark subject to the guidelines, which puts it in the superset of their trademarks. And lawyers are always looking for loopholes that can be abused. And it's not as important, but there are some fun ones under proper trademark use as well, where they are very particular about how you are allowed to write things. So, it is unacceptable to write Rust. It is acceptable to write Rust with a capital letter. Cargo obviously needs to be cargo, not cargo. I don't know why anyone would actually write that, but my favorite one is don't use a trademark as a possessive. Instead, the following noun should be used in possessive form or the sentence reworded so there is no possessive. Unacceptable. Cargo's desktop interface is very clean. Acceptable. The Cargo desktop's interface is very clean. This is super awkward to read. This is the way that any sane person would write it. Always use a trademark as an adjective modifying a noun. You can see the nouns we prefer under our trademarks. Unacceptable. This is a cargo. Anyone can install it. Acceptable. This is the cargo package manager. Anyone can install it. Now, even with everything I've shown you, most of the trademark policy is still completely reasonable. The stuff about using their logo and things like that, I don't think anybody is really complaining about. But the way this reads to me is it was written by a litigation lawyer who's setting it up to basically create problems for the community to go after people that are trying to operate in good faith. This is not a situation where the user is going to be able to use the trademarks how they want, like they claim. I don't know whether this is malicious or just incompetence, but either way, this is the draft that currently exists. And if you don't like what you've seen today, be sure to go and get involved in the survey, leave your feedback, and hopefully they actually go and fix it. If they don't, I wouldn't be surprised if in a month from now, we're hearing about a Rust fork. And now you know why this meme is a violation of the Rust trademark policy. So hopefully you learnt something today. And if you are using the Rust language, you're involved in Rust in some way, I do highly encourage you to go and voice your feedback, even if that feedback is in support of the Rust trademark policy. If you think this is a good thing, go and let them know. But it seems like a lot of people are not exactly happy with what is being proposed here, and hopefully it doesn't go forward. At least that's where I stand. But let me know your thoughts in the comment section down below. If you like this video, go and like the video. And if you really like the video and you want to become one of these amazing people over here, check out the Patreon, subscribe, Pay, linked in the description down below. That's going to be it for me, and maybe the Rust haters were onto something.